British colonialism, 18th to 20th century. The British East India Company emerged as the dominant colonial power in the Indian subcontinent during the 18th and 19th centuries. Through a combination of diplomacy, warfare, and economic exploitation, the British established control over vast territories, culminating in the establishment of the British Raj in 1858. British rule in the Indian subcontinent was characterized by direct governance and exploitation of resources. The British implemented a centralized administrative system with governors and councils to govern their colonies. They also introduced legal and judicial reforms based on English common law. The treatment of locals under British rule varied depending on factors such as region, social class, and ethnicity. While some Indians benefited from British policies, particularly in terms of education and employment opportunities, others faced discrimination and exploitation. In terms of governance, the British made significant contributions to infrastructure development, including the construction of railways, roads, and telegraph lines. They also introduced modern administrative institutions, such as the Indian Civil Service, to govern their colonies efficiently. In the field of education and health, the British made substantial investments compared to other colonial powers. They established a network of schools and colleges, including prestigious institutions such as the Indian Institutes of Technology and the Indian Institutes of Management. They also introduced modern medical practices and established hospitals to treat European settlers and local populations. In conclusion, the colonial period of the Indian subcontinent was a complex and transformative era characterized by the influence of various European powers. Each colonial power had its own motivations, methods, and legacies, which continue to shape the region's socio-economic and cultural landscape to this day. While colonialism brought about significant changes and advancements in certain areas, it also resulted in exploitation, inequality, and lasting legacies of imperialism. The impact of colonialism on the general population of the Indian subcontinent was profound and multifaceted, leaving a lasting legacy that continues to shape the region today. While colonialism brought about some advancements and modernizations, it also resulted in widespread exploitation, socio-economic inequalities, cultural disruptions, and loss of autonomy. Here are some key aspects of the impact of colonialism on the general population. Economic exploitation. Colonial powers extracted vast resources from the Indian subcontinent, including raw materials, agricultural produce, and labor. The imposition of exploitative economic policies, such as land revenue systems, taxes, and trade monopolies, contributed to impoverishment and economic stagnation for many indigenous communities. Social hierarchies and discrimination. Colonial rule reinforced and sometimes exacerbated existing social hierarchies based on caste, class, and ethnicity. British policies often favored certain elite groups, leading to the concentration of wealth and power in the hands of a minority, while marginalizing and disenfranchising the majority of the population. Cultural disruptions and loss. Colonialism disrupted traditional socio-cultural structures and practices, often leading to the erosion of indigenous knowledge systems, languages, and customs. The imposition of Western education, legal systems, and values contributed to a sense of cultural alienation and loss of identity among many communities. Political subjugation and loss of autonomy. Colonial rule undermined the sovereignty and self-governance of indigenous polities, replacing traditional rulers with colonial administrators and bureaucrats. The imposition of colonial laws, regulations, and governance systems limited the agency and political participation of the general population. Health and social welfare. While colonial powers introduced some modern medical practices and public health initiatives, they often prioritized the health and well-being of European settlers over the indigenous population. Many communities suffered from diseases, famines, and inadequate access to healthcare under colonial rule. Education and literacy. Colonialism brought about the establishment of modern educational institutions and the spread of literacy in certain regions. However, access to education was often limited, and the curriculum was designed to serve the interests of the colonial administration rather than the empowerment of the indigenous population. Resistance and struggle for independence. Despite the challenges posed by colonialism, the Indian subcontinent saw numerous forms of resistance, rebellion, and socio-political movements against colonial rule. Leaders such as Muhammad Ali Jinnah, Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru and Subhas Chandra Bose mobilized mass movements for independence, eventually leading to the end of colonial rule in 1947. Overall, the impact of colonialism on the general population of the Indian subcontinent was characterized by a complex interplay of exploitation, oppression, resistance, and cultural transformation. While colonialism brought about certain advancements and modernizations, it also perpetuated inequalities and injustices that continue to shape the region's socio-economic and political dynamics in the post-colonial era.